Remember January 6th, 2021? Seeing those images from the Capitol, it was quite jarring. You had American flags right next to crosses, Jesus Saves banners, even those old colonial appeal to heaven flags.
Yeah, it wasn't just random chaos. It was a pretty potent display of something specific, Christian nationalism.
Right. So let's unpack that. What exactly is Christian nationalism? It's a term we hear a lot.
Well, basically, it's a political ideology,
Mhm.
and it seeks to kind of fuse Christian identity with American identity. The core idea is that Christianity should be privileged by the state.
Privileged. How so?
It often carries this implication, that to be a true American, you really have to be Christian.
Okay, and it's important, I think, to draw some lines here. This isn't just patriotism, like love for the country's civic ideas.
No, definitely not.
Huh.
And it's also distinct from what some scholars call American civil religion.
Ah, right, like the shared symbols.
Yeah.
Under God and the pledge, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Those act more like a unifying civic faith, but they don't necessarily tie into one specific religion's rules. Though, interestingly, that under God phrase...
Caddied in the 50s, wasn't it?
Yeah, 1954. Cold War context. And it was pretty explicit. It was meant to differentiate the U.S. from godless communism, so it had an exclusionary aspect right from the start, aimed at atheists.
Huh.
Yeah.
So while Christian nationalism might feel like just old-school American tradition to some folks, it's actually carving out something much more specific and often more exclusive.
Precisely. So today in our deep dive, we want to look at where this movement came from, the arguments people make for it, the big criticisms against it, and, how it's actually affecting things in American society.
Okay, let's start with the history then. Where did the ideas even begin?
Well, you can trace some ideological seeds way back. Think Puritans, Governor John Winthrop, 1630, talking about a city upon a hill.
That sense of American exceptionalism, right? A special mission.
Exactly. It set a kind of template, this idea that America has a unique, almost divinely ordained purpose, made the nation itself feel sacred to some.
And that idea didn't just stay static, it evolved. Fast forward to the mid-20th century.
Right, the Cold War era again. That's when we saw religious language getting baked into national symbols more formally.
Like we mentioned, under God in 54.
And in God we trust, becoming the official motto in 56. This wasn't just symbolic fluff. It actively blurred those lines between faith and national identity, made it seem natural, inevitable even.
But the movement, as we kind of recognize it today, that really seemed to gain steam later, maybe the 1970s, what happened then?
Yeah, a really pivotal moment or series of moments was the conservative Christian reaction to Supreme Court rulings,
Right.
specifically the ones banning state-sponsored prayer in public schools.
Like Engel v. Vitale in 62.
That's the big one. For a lot of conservative Christians, that felt like an attack, like the government was pushing religion out of public life, undermining core values, and that really mobilized them.
Mobilize them how?
Into organized political action, on a scale that hadn't really been seen before. That's where a lot of the modern energy comes from.
Okay, so that's the background. Now let's look at the arguments for Christian nationalism. From the proponents' view, what's the case?
Well, a core belief is that the U.S. was founded as a Christian nation. They point to things like the Declaration of Independence mentioning rights coming from a creator.
And they see America's success historically as evidence of that.
As evidence of a special relationship with God, yeah, that the nation has been blessed because of its Christian foundations.
And it's often framed as a defense mechanism too, right? Against perceived societal changes.
Absolutely. It's presented as a bulwark against what they see as moral decline, things like moral relativism, social liberalism, they might mention neo-Marxism, and definitely LGBTQ rights.
So the goal is restoring Judeo-Christian values. That's a phrase you hear a lot.
Right. It's a broad term, but it generally means restoring a perceived traditional moral and social order based on principles drawn from Christianity and Judaism. Theologically, some argue it's a civic duty, actually.
Duty.
Yeah, a duty to influence the nation for good. They talk about an ordered love for your country, one that's, properly below love for God, but still very important.
Okay, so that's the case for it. But there are obviously some very strong critiques. Let's get into those. What's the main constitutional argument against it?
Critics say it's just fundamentally antithetical to the constitutional ideal of a pluralistic republic. It clashes directly with the First Amendment's Establishment Clause, the part that says Congress can't establish a religion.
Because it inherently favors one religion over others.
Exactly. It makes non-Christians into, effectively, second-class citizens. Some sources we looked at go so far as to call it the single biggest threat to religious freedom in the U.S. today.
Wow. And there's a connection to authoritarianism mentioned, too.
Yeah, research often finds a correlation. The thinking is, if you believe there's one divinely ordained truth and way for society, you might be more inclined to support strong leaders who promise to impose it, even if it means overriding democratic norms.
What about from within Christianity itself? How do other Christians view this?
Oh, there's huge criticism from many Christians. They see it as a serious theological error, like a form of idolatry where the nation takes the place of God.
Idolatry. Strong word.
Very. They argue it distorts the actual Christian faith. It preaches what some call an American Jesus, partisan, exclusionary, focused on power. Some even call it a heresy.
And beyond the theological, what about the social impacts? Research links it to certain attitudes.
Yeah, consistently, studies show correlations between stronger Christian nationalist beliefs and exclusionary views, things like anti-Black racism, anti-immigrant sentiment, anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim bigotry.
Why that connection?
It seems related to that us versus them dynamic. If there's a true Christian American, then others are implicitly or sometimes explicitly excluded or seen as threats.
And perhaps most worrying, the link to political violence.
That's a major concern, especially post-January 6th. The belief that you're enacting God's will can, for some, seem to justify extreme actions to achieve political goals. It's not unique to the U.S. either. We're seeing a rise in religious nationalism globally.
Is there a historical parallel people point to?
A chilling one is 20th century South Africa. Christian nationalism there provided the theological justification for apartheid. A future prime minister even openly called it an ally of National Socialism back then. It shows how dangerous this fusion can become.
So, bringing it to today in America, what are the tangible impacts we're seeing now? How does this ideology actually shape things?
Well, it's a really strong predictor of voting behavior. Support for Donald Trump, for instance, correlates highly with Christian nationalist views. And significantly, it also influences whether people accept Democratic election results, especially if their side loses.
And it drives actual policy agendas, right?
Absolutely. Things like restrictive voting laws, which some see as protecting election integrity through a particular lens, but critics see as disenfranchisement. Also, a lot of the culture war legislation, abortion bans, book bans in schools, anti-LGBTQ plus policies, these are often directly fueled by this worldview.
And the courts. We've seen some major Supreme Court rulings recently.
Yes, rulings like Carson v. Macon, which allowed public funds for religious schools, and Town of Greece v. Galloway upholding legislative prayer sessions are seen by proponents as huge victories, further blurring that line between church and state.
So when you put all this together, what's the fundamental conflict here?
It really boils down to a fight over the very definition of America. Is it meant to be a pluralistic, secular democracy where rights aren't tied to religious belief? Or is it fundamentally a Christian nation with a specific, divinely ordained identity?
And it seems like it's also tearing at American Christianity itself.
It really is. It forces American Christians to ask some deep questions about their faith. Is it about a universal message of love and humility? Or can it be used as a kind of cultural identity, a political weapon, really?
Which brings us to you, the listener. How do these two really quite different visions of America square with your own understanding, your sense of national identity, and the role you think faith should or shouldn't play in public life?
Yeah, it's a fundamental question. And how it gets answered will definitely continue to shape the Republic, probably for a long time to come.